I want that man. You give him to me now, or I'm gonna take him.
Now this film was hyped up so much, or at least for the people who were looking forward to seeing it. The trailer came out a little over a year ago, and fans of the graphic novel or summer blockbusters in general were looking forward to it because it has a great cast and it's marketed as being from the director of Iron Man. Truthfully, I was not looking forward to seeing it, and quite frankly, I'm glad. My expectations were low, but still it managed to bore the hell out of me. With a title like this, I'm sorry, but you just can't take it seriously, and the writers want you to buy into this relatively serious film. It's not like Iron Man, Favreau's other film, which has both serious and light-hearted moments. Here there was an odd joke to loosen the tension, but it just falls flat. I would take time out of this review maybe to talk about the storyline, but there isn't a true strong narrative. Basically, aliens come down and take away residents of this small town, and a bunch of cowboys along with this mysterious man with no name character who is trying to find out about his past, or at least to the events which brought him here. It's that simple. Basic adventure through the rest of it. The problem is we spend so much time with these characters through the desert on this adventure, and there's nothing remotely interesting projected on the screen. Now the cast is great. Daniel Craig is this Jason Bourne type gunslinger. He was really into the role, I have to give him credit. Harrison Ford, cool as always. Nothing special about his character, but it's Harrison Ford. I found it funny, it's probably just a coincidence, but Harrison Ford is most known for playing Han Solo from Star Wars, right? The last, or at least one of the last lines uttered by him in this film is to a little kid, and he says, "I'm your father." It's probably just a coincidence, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. The third lead character of the film is a young barmaid or prostitute. I really wasn't paying attention, played by the incredibly hot Olivia Wilde. Now, as good as she is to look at, she didn't belong in this movie. Granted, I probably wouldn't have been as excited to see this if it wasn't for that semi-naked scene in the trailer, but still, anyone could have played that role. Not blaming Olivia Wilde necessarily, but the writers just made that character so weak and non-interesting. But like I say, there isn't much else going on to keep you interested, so at least she's hot, that's all I'll say. Now, I love the western aspects of the film. I love the setting, the cinematography and the costumes, but I couldn't get behind any of the characters because you know how it'll turn out. Aliens are going to come down, abduct people, and they're all going to team up to rescue them. If this was entirely a western, perhaps I would be really into it. But throwing in aliens into the mix... Now this is an action movie, it's not trying to be an all-out western epic, and truthfully I have to admit, some of the action is pretty good, if I could see it. Despite this being a western, so you'd expect some of the fight scenes to be in the desert, in the sunlight, instead most of it's at night or in ruined alien lairs with no lighting, with the exception of a few beams of light coming through the cracks in the roof. Now, not all of the fights are in the dark. Not to spoil it, but the last battle of the film does take place out in the desert, so you can see everything what's going on. But the fights with the humans, not involving the aliens, mainly just consist of Daniel Craig punching someone and then they fall down. Occasionally he'll do something cool like tackle some guy off a horse, but that happens in like the first 5 minutes. I really like this though. Daniel Craig reminds me of Clint Eastwood from the Sergio Leone Dollars trilogy. He's really cool. However, we end up getting to know too much about him, which just completely ruins that idea. The good thing about the man with no name is that he arrives in this town and you don't know anything about him. But the writers try to make you feel this is the same character and just give you his backstory through a series of flashbacks and visions, which just ruins the idea. There is just nothing remotely special about this. We've seen it all before in either a western or sci-fi film, and by mixing the two genres together doesn't make an original piece. With a concept like Cowboys and Aliens, coming from I believe a series of graphic novels, if this was in the hands of perhaps an independent director and made an art house film rather than a summer action film, maybe the final piece would be interesting. It really has a lot of potential, but they don't really do much with it. Cowboys and Aliens, what more were you expecting really? It's basically just a western with aliens. That's it. As for a summer blockbuster, especially one produced by Steven Spielberg, it has got a high production value and some impressive CGI. The alien designs do look creepy, and as CGI effects, they do look pretty cool. Now you may be thinking, cowboys versus aliens. Cowboys with pistols and shotguns against these 10-foot tall amphibious laser cannon wielding beasts. Doesn't seem fair, huh? And in the earlier parts of the film, when we're first introduced to them, it takes groups of people to bring them down. But then it pulls the Starship Troopers on us, and then it takes only one shot from a pistol during the last battle to bring one down. And given that this is a western, you have to have Native Americans in there. You can't become invested in the last fight scene because they end up just changing the rules, and one shot can just bring one down. I was very cynical while I was watching this, and I was just bored through most of it, to be honest. Perhaps I wasn't in the right mood to see this, despite knowing what to expect. I just didn't care for this. I'll give it a relatively low 5.6 out of 10. A little harsh, but to be honest, an hour after walking out of the theatre, I just forgot what I went to see. It was just a forgettable movie. Harrison Ford and Daniel Craig are great together. It has some impressive action set pieces, but still not one to catch in theatres.
Crom, I've never prayed to you before. I have no tongue for it. All that matters is that I see a good movie today. That's what's important. I will tolerate one as cheesy as the original Schwarzenegger film, or as bad as the sequel, but never as god-awful as the spin-off that is Red Sonja. So grant me one request. Grant me that this new Conan be awesome. And if you do not listen, then to hell with you! Crom! To hell with you!
Behold! In despair! Your new master!
Allah raises the souls of the unspeakably evil.
You're sought to enslave all of Hyboria. No man should live in chains. Run from me, and I will tear apart the mountains to find you. I will follow you to hell.
August, boy, the month of shitty movies. First Cowboys and Aliens, and now Conan the Barbarian, which I actually had some hope for. Don't know why. I'm not the biggest fan of the original Arnie films. Haven't read any of the source material where they came from. But there's something about Conan which made me expect something special. Now, this film, like the original, starts off with narration. No, not from Mako. Sadly, he isn't with us anymore. Instead, from none other than Morgan Freeman. It would have made sense to have James Earl Jones to narrate. After all, he was in the original, but still, Morgan Freeman is cool. He is God, you know. What exactly does he say in the opening? I can't remember. Nothing special. And that's carried out throughout the whole movie. There is nothing special about this new Conan at all. Jason Momoa was cast as this new Conan. Now, in order to play Conan, you have to have a few specific details. 1. You need to have pecs. 2. You need to look menacing, which isn't hard when you have eyebrows like that. 3. You need to be able to spew out terrible dialogue which sounds like Batman with throat cancer. And 4. You have to be a terrible actor. Jason ticks all of those boxes. One thing he lacks is the charisma of Arnold, and he doesn't have much of a presence here. There is nothing about him which made me go, oh yeah, he is Conan. As for the rest of the cast, Ron Perlman plays Conan's father, who looks more like Aslan from Narnia, truthfully. All joking aside, I was really into the scenes with him. The film started off strong, and I really got a sense that this could be a great film. Now, the villain of the film is played by Stephen Lang, whose character is called Kalar Zim. And the storyline of the film is very straightforward. He's after this piece of mask to resurrect his dead wife. Then, after Conan's family is killed and he's grew up into his 20s, I believe, he sets out to get revenge against Stephen Lang, who's taken his sweet fucking time to get the job done, you know, only a decade or so. Here, Conan travels from different locations with nothing really connecting them together beside this relatively weak storyline, and each location just feels like another set. One scene we're in this slave village, then we're in this cave out in the wasteland, and then we're in this abandoned set from last year's Clash of the Titans or Lord of the Rings. Now one good thing about this new Conan is that it is violent. Not saying that the original wasn't, but this one is bloody. The fights are honestly pretty impressive, with decent choreography even though you can so tell they've rehearsed the sword fights over and over. Now this is all fine and dandy until it gets about halfway in the film when it honestly starts to get boring. It starts off so strong that by the time the last fight comes along, you've already seen everything else throughout the earlier parts of the film. Oh, and the editing is fucking atrocious at times. It doesn't really show until the last fight of the scene where there's just a few quick shots and you're like, wait, go back, what the fuck just happened? The fights appear and then just quickly disappear like most of the supporting cast. However, when they are happening, they are pretty exciting. The fight with the Sand People was honestly pretty good. No, not those Sand People, zombie warriors literally made out of sand. There's also this fight at the beginning with the young Conan, which was honestly really cool, and then he shoves his finger up some guy's nose, or at least the hole where his nose would be. By the time the final fight comes along, you honestly want the film to just end. The dialogue is another problem. Now, I can't critique this film as much because the original had incredibly cheesy lines, but that's understandable because it's Arnold. He's known for that stuff. Here, it's just cringe-worthy. Nothing memorable at all. Unlike the original, which is one of those films you can just quote completely out of context, here there's only one line which I found to be pretty cool, but it's in the trailer. Now, I know this review has been negative towards the film. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's a bad film, but it's just not memorable at all. As I mentioned earlier, I really liked this at first. Great impressive sets, bloody violent fight scenes, great cinematography, and some nice moments with Conan and his father. Then after we're introduced to the lead female character and the true storyline is laid down, it just becomes so generic and bland. Also, from what I've heard, the 3D wasn't anything special, despite the fact that you can so tell it's used as a gimmick, with arrows flying at the screen and soldiers holding up the sword towards it, all kinds of shit like that. I didn't see this film in 3D, but it's not worth paying full price to see it in theatres, let alone play the extra more just to see it in the third dimension, which everyone's buzzing about. And where's the badass Basil Polidoris soundtrack? You can't have a Conan film without that soundtrack, it's iconic. Anyways, enough talk. This new Conan the Barbarian is just simply forgetful. Not even as enjoyable as Conan the Destroyer, but at least it's better than Red Sonja, that's all I'll say. It's just a generic sword and sandals movie. Simply rent it, not worth seeing in theatres. Yes, it has bloody fight scenes and hot chicks showing off the tits, but it's something you expect from a Conan film. But still, it just didn't deliver on all the areas, which makes this a must-see. Just a rental. And make this a drinking game. Every time a horse gets punched or falls over, take a sip. As for a score, 5 out of 10. Perhaps a little generous after what I've been saying, but still, I don't want Jason Momoa knocking at my door anytime soon. Fucking air freshener.